Hello, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our series of monthly talks on pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood, where we're discussing this incredible understanding of the mind that you may have picked up or be picking up slowly through the talks, what on earth it's all about, which is sometimes referred to as the three principles, or some people call it innate health. And it's basically just an amazing understanding of the mind that just helps us to really shift our understanding of everything, of how life really works. So I'm Deborah Binun. I work with mostly pregnant ladies. And today joining me is the wonderful Stacey Levine, who I love, who is, I believe, a clinical psychologist and an innate health practitioner. And Stacey actually was one of my main trainers of this three principles understanding. And I just love her. Like, as you'll see, you're just so like down to earth and amazing and like so humble. And like every session I have with you, I just think your understanding is so it's kind of so unique. I don't really understand. I don't think you know how special you are. But it's just somehow you have a real depth of understanding that manages to I always see something deeper when I speak to you. So anyway, I really wanted you to come on here and speak to all our well, we've got a range of people, some pregnant ladies, some new mums, and some actually birth professionals. So it will be available. There are lots of people I know listening to the recording. So yes. So over to you. I don't know where you want to start. I mean, the topic is that the power of presence in birth and beyond. So yes, I look forward to hearing.
Well, Deb, thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. Mm-hmm. It almost made me blush. In fact, it did make me blush. You see me going. But thank you so much. I mean, it was just a beautiful introduction. And yeah, you know, I'm so grateful that you asked me to be part of these talks and to speak to women, whether they're pregnant, have given birth, or have already given birth and are a mom of one or many, because I believe there's something so powerful in understanding how our minds work and what's behind it that we can all benefit from, even if it's just a little glimpse of seeing more into our minds or more into the potential of who we are as human beings. I think, I always say little goes a long way. So thank you for inviting me to do this talk. I've called it the power of presence in birth and beyond, because, I mean, I think you said somewhere, and I really related to it, there's so much talk of being present. There's the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, who's amazing, but there's a lot of, it's almost become quite cliched when people say, just be present, live in the moment, it's kind of, it's almost like just, you hear it a lot. Be present, don't just relax, be present, let go, be in the moment. And I thought there's such depth to that. There really is. In understanding how our minds work, it's a natural outcome for human beings to be present. So in today's talk, I just really wanted to shed a little bit of light in how natural that is for us as human beings, as natural as it is for the sun to come out and shine, and as natural as it is for our hair to grow longer, say, you cut your nails, they grow back, as natural as it is for our hearts to beat and our lungs to breathe, that's as natural as it is for us human beings to be present. And there only is ever one thing that takes us away from being present, which I'll talk a little bit about. But just to say that, before I became a mom, I had so many ideas of, well, all I wanted to do when I was a little girl was to be a mom. That was my dream. When people said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was a mom. I want to be a mother with a family, and I just want to live happily ever after. And that was my biggest ambition. And truthfully, it has been my biggest teacher. Being a mom and my children have been my biggest teachers, because well, they've taught me so much about being present. So the first point I really wanted to make is when you say to be present, as I said before, a lot of people would say it means to live in the moment. And so I kind of try to take it one step back. What is the moment? What are moments made up of, right? And if, like for me, moments are made up of experiences, right? Experiences, many experiences make up moments. So your experience, in essence, is moment to moment. And now, before I gave birth, and I'm sure, maybe not all moms, but I'm sure a lot of moms could be able to relate to, even if it's your first birth or your third birth, a lot goes through a woman's mind, right? Of what will the birth be like, or the expectations of what kind of a birth you want to have. So while you're busy thinking of that, you have expectations, right? You have expectations, you have ideas. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with having ideas and expectations. But on reflecting on all three of my actual births, when I birthed my kids, the actual experience of that birth, that moment of birth, was nothing like I had imagined it to be. Even if it was close to it, it wasn't in the moment that I birthed my children. It was its own experience in that moment. It was, I could never have imagined it to be what it was. Could never have. So that kind of, and I think you could look at that for any experience, really, right? So when people say to live in the moment, there's actually a truth behind that, because when you're truly in the moment, in an experience that's occurring, that's happening, you're present. You're actually in that experience. So it's so it's almost, again, it's so natural. It's so natural. It's like we're having experiences all the time, whether we like it or not. Like even sitting listening to this webinar right now, you, Magdalena, whoever else is listening to it, is having an experience of listening to this talk. This is an experience that's happening. Now, what takes you away from that experience, what takes you away from being present, is only ever one thing. It's thoughts, right? But it's your mind thinking. Maybe like you're getting distracted. You're thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner, or you're thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow. And then suddenly you come back, you're listening again, and you think, oh, I forgot what she said the last 5 minutes. I wasn't present. So what happened is your mind takes you away. Your mind, through thought, literally takes you to wherever you go, wherever your mind goes, right? You go wherever your mind goes. But coming back to that, the fact that there's only one thing that takes us away from the moment, and that's our ideas, our beliefs, thinking something should be a certain way. But when we're truly in the moment, when we're truly in an experience, when we're in that moment, it's not to say that there is no thought, but you're almost, and this is going to be a much deeper point. It's a much deeper point. So for people that don't know much about the principles, this is talking to the principles, because the principles is what creates experience, right? You cannot have an experience without these fundamental principles of mind, thought, and consciousness, which is our thinking. We have a thought, and our thinking creates an experience. We suddenly become aware of our experience. So it's moment to moment to moment, but there wouldn't be an experience. There couldn't be an experience if you didn't have this power of thought creating it. So if I had to come in and somehow zap thought from your consciousness, I had to kind of go into everyone's mind here, take out thought, it would almost be like taking out your heart. You would become like a robot, and you wouldn't be able to function. You wouldn't be able to see the world. You wouldn't be able to see life, right? So the principles is another way of saying the principles enable us to experience life. The principles enable us to experience the birth of our children. The principles enable us to experience frustration. Every experience you're having is a creation from these principles. So you're never without them. As long as you're alive and your heart's beating and your lungs are breathing, you're having an experience. So in a way, if you're a living human being, you are experiencing life moment to moment to moment. So there's a huge power in that. And that's why I called it the power of presence, because it's what I meant by the power of presence. I'm alluding to the power of the principles, right? The power of the principles. So my question would be, is what is present even if you are not? Okay, so just to think about that. What is present in human beings even if you are not? So just thinking about that is that when we get lost in thought, when we get distracted, right? When we get busy-minded, it's as if we're not in the here and now. We're somewhere else, wherever our mind is taking us. So it could be that you're making breakfast for your child. This actually happened this morning. I was busy making breakfast, my kids' school lunch, and my daughter was busy talking, but I was so lost in my own thought of, seriously, she could actually be making her own lunch by now. I've got so much to do today, that she was talking, but I didn't hear a thing she was saying. And I didn't hear a thing because I was going off on my own thought. I wasn't present with her in that moment. I was with my own thinking. But again, I think that's a very human thing. I think we all do that, right? We all get lost in thought. We all get, caught up in our worries, in our excitement of what's to come. We all get caught up in that. But going back to the question, what's present even if you are not? And this is where the hope lies. This is where there's hope. For me is the best word. Hope, excitement, is that there's always a place to come back to, right? Just like there's always a coming back. You can always come back to presence, because within presence lies this power. So as soon as I realized I was like off with my own kind of thinking, I came back to the present moment and connected in that moment with my daughter. But which was another moment in and of itself. So life, if you think about it, is made up moment to moment to moment of different thoughts, different experiences, more thoughts, more experiences. But all the while that's happening, that couldn't happen, as I said, if we weren't alive, breathing with the magic of the principles. Is this making sense so far? Are you all with me?
Yeah, I think so.
So I wanted just to give you, just to kind of maybe bring it home a little bit, is I was working with a client a couple of days ago, and we were talking about what all human beings have going for them, what is common to all human beings, this, which I'm referring to as this power that lies in presence, right? The power that lies in being present is the same power or the same wisdom or well-being that human beings are born with. It's an intelligence. It's an intelligence greater than our own intelligence. So it's a lot of people refer to it as resilience. So when we ask people how they see resilience, you'll hear people often saying it's the ability to bounce back, it's the ability to get through things, but probably one of the way I see resilience is it's a way of being. It's a way of being, because you're not bound by anything. It is a bouncing back. So no matter how much life throws at you, as human beings, because we have this resilience inside of us, there isn't anything that can truly knock us down or be bigger than us, even though it might seem that way. So even people that have had difficult births or have lost children in birth, or who have had postpartum depression, those moments can seem massive to those individuals, and it can seem like those moments can crush that human being. But ultimately, when they start to learn about their own resilience, they start to see that they're more than that experience, right? That experience doesn't define them. The experience doesn't define them, because it's their resilience that is getting them through the experience, if that makes sense. So I had a client a couple of days ago, and she has a lot of anxiety, and she said to me that she feels overwhelmed at times by her anxiety. And we were talking about this resilience, this absolute resilience that is inbred, that is in us. And I was asking her to reflect on a time in her life where she can remember an experience. And sometimes that's helpful for people, just to think like, well, yeah, has there been a time in my life where life looked so difficult, but yet I somehow got through it? And what was that about? And she gave an example of when she had her first child, and the baby didn't breathe initially, and it went blue, and she could tell that the doctors were starting to panic. And she said she felt this anxiety lift in her, like rise in her, because she was worrying. So part of what the principle says, that what you think, you feel. That's a principle. You feeling thought moment to moment. So it was no wonder that she was very worried as she birthed her baby. And she said she was overcome with this feeling of anxiety. And then she said she looked at the doctors, and the doctor took one look at her and said, you don't need to do that. That's all he said. You don't need to basically worry. Now, I don't know how it happened for her, but she said she's someone that worries all the time. She's a worry pot. She said she's always worrying. She says, but in that moment, it was as if she truly understood what he said. You don't need to do that. And it was like her mind offered her up. Almost she became face to face with her own resilience. And she said to me, Stacey, the situation was dire, that my child wasn't well, she said. She says, but I just intuitively knew what to do. She said, I sang to my baby. I told my baby stories. She said, and I just knew my baby would be okay. I just knew it. And she said, she said, I just, it was like this power came over me and I was okay. But she said, then there's so many other areas in my life, and the baby did come home and was absolutely fine 6 weeks later. But she says, but then there's so many other areas of my life where I just worry. And like, what's that about? So, but the point of why I'm shared that story is because that, before she birthed her baby, she again had lots of ideas of how she wanted the birth to be, and it didn't go at all how she thought it would be. And when that moment came of giving her birth, she had an experience of it. You cannot not have an experience of an experience, if that makes sense. You cannot not. We are always experiencing our experiences because we're experiencing them through thought. And as long as we're alive, thought is running through our system. So you can never be without an experience. And and that's where the power lies. When you see the depth of that, it's almost like there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing that we need to, we almost can't pre-think it or pre-solve it. But when we connect it with what is truth, when we connect it with that energy of the universe, in a sense, which is intelligent, and this might sound like real, like what to some people who don't know about the principles. And just to say, like off on a tangent, if anyone does want to know more about it, there's lots, I'm sure, that Debs, you can direct them to learn more about it. But the intelligence that I speak of, which I say is an intelligence beyond our own intelligence, is built into our psychological well-being. It's built into us. So when we're confronted with any situation, good or bad, we have everything inside of us to know how to deal with that situation, right? So we call it, you might have people talk about it being responsive to the moment as opposed to being reactive, right? And it's not to say that sometimes we don't get reactive or worried or anxious, but when we're aligned with this intelligence, when we're aligned with it, another way of saying being aligned with something is when we're present, when we're truly present. When we're present, it's almost like we're plugged into the power socket of intelligence. Like we're plugged into it, and it comes up through us with creative ideas, with inspiration, with being calm in a difficult situation, or however it shows up. And so it's something that's universal, that everyone has, but it shows up differently for people. So I'll give you another example of that. It was last night, I was actually listening to some podcasts of Michael Neal's. He's amazing. He's a coach who does a lot of work in this area. And I was listening to, he has a program called Creating the Impossible. And what I loved about this is, and this is what I thought about when I was going to do the talk. So he has a program called Creating the Impossible, and people come onto his program, and the whole point of his program is, you think of something that's impossible, that you think is not possible for you to do or achieve, and we're going to get you to do that, right? So he's had many people go through his programs, and it's amazing how many of them have achieved the impossible. But what stood out for me is that these people's impossible dreams are all different from each other's. They're not the same. People are not saying, oh, I want to do this. They're all completely different. But it's almost like what's behind, the fuel behind that's making their dreams a reality is the same, right? So it's almost like the energy, the power of connecting to that presence, that, you know, which we could say is the principles, the power of the principles. When people see deeply into that, it makes almost the impossible possible, right? But it's worth listening to, that podcast that I listened to. And it just kind of, I'll never forget the very first time I gave I think it was a talk on the principles. I was sitting with, it was actually Keith Blevins in the that big conference venue. And I remember sitting there feeling so unbelievably nervous. I remember literally feeling the sweat dripping down my body, feeling my heart like pounding. And I remember saying to the audience, if anyone doesn't know what the principles are, all you got to do, if you could see inside my body, you would see the principles in action, because I'm so nervous. I've got such nervous thinking going through me, and I'm literally experiencing it in my body, right? And then I remember saying to them, but what's fascinating is, as I look out into the audience, I see all of these people, this like spread of people. Some are male, female, some are short, some are tall, some are black, some are white. But we all have eyes, nose, a mouth, a heart, fingers, toes, a digestive system, right? So there is something about all of us that is universal, that is operating through us, and that's the same for everyone. How it then presents itself, like I was sitting on the stage nervous, someone in the audience was sitting there having the time of their life. So we were having different experiences, like Michael and these people are having different ideas, but what's behind it is the same. And so what's creating your experience is the same intelligence that we all have, that we're all hooked into. And I think I said this on our last webinar that I did, Debs, is that for me, birth, there is no greater intelligence in how a baby is born, how a baby is conceived and grows in the womb and then is birthed. The timing of that, as much as sometimes the doctors have developed amazing procedures, to create an in vitro, which is all incredible. But even those incredible procedures have been thought up. It's come through a human mind, but it's being thought up through this intelligence, right? The intelligence of the universe has come through someone's mind, and they've invented something. And it's that same intelligence is what's creating a baby. And it's beyond our imagination or intellect to even comprehend how huge that is. But it's just, for me, it's the most grounding and hopeful thing to know that no matter what experience a person is having, good or bad, that experience is, the more we see the momentariness of it, the more we see how that experience is being created in the moment, the more we kind of can come back to home base. And what I mean by home base, it's like, we get present again. We become back to what is. That's another way I like to talk about it, coming back to what is as opposed to what isn't. And often what isn't is all the noise in our head, all the worry and the what ifs and the expectations, and what if this doesn't go right. And, even like beyond the pregnancy. So with our kids, what if my kid doesn't get good grades, or what if my kids, don't have good manners, or whatever it is, all our what ifs. When we get lost in the what isn't, we kind of forget what is. And what is a constant. What is the power of presence. It's coming back to what is. That is always with us, even if we're in that moment, somewhere else. That power of presence is always there. So it helps me to set myself straight. It helps me to be accountable for my own, to take responsibility for my own feelings. So what I mean by that is, there's been times when I've been frustrated, or, I think that's my phone, sorry. There's been times when I've been worried or frustrated, and because thought creates a feeling and it is your reality in that moment, if it comes up, like with me being shouting or being angry or irritable with my kids, the moment I come back to home base, the moment I'm back in home base, I'm being informed by this power of the principles. It's like I know what to do. So often in that situation, it'll be, I'm sorry guys, mom just lost it there, or so it's kind of, it helps you to be honest. It helps you to be honest with yourself. It helps you to be honest in relationships. And it helps you to, again, like there was another client who had her baby, and the birth really wasn't how she wanted it to be. And she lived in so much upset, so much regret for weeks on end, that she was just thinking, it didn't go like I wanted it to be. I wish it had, that she was missing out on her baby in that moment. She was missing out. She was breastfeeding, but thinking about how the birth didn't go like she wanted it to be. And when you start to see that there's a kindness to this design, there's a kindness when you almost allow a breathing space to come in to the mind, when it's like that snow globe settles, there's a space, again, is that in that presence, there's a space, there's a kindness to it. So there's a forgiveness there and a compassion. But she almost just had to see what she was doing first. She had to kind of see, oh my word, I'm torturing myself with this regret. I'm torturing myself. I can put the hammer down, because that moment-to-moment experience is happening all the time, right? So even if you're not thinking of something else, it's still happening. Like your heart is still beating. And it's just again, as I said earlier, birth is for me a beautiful representation of this intelligence that we're a part of. And there's no greater reminder for me of how, as women, we are privileged to birth a baby, right? We've been given this gift to birth a human being into this world, and then to go through life and seeing, each stage, and I just think that I don't know, there's a beautiful gift in that. And that I think, it's probably a whole other topic, but just the expectations that women put on themselves, or, what they think, how they should mother or how they should birth. I think when that gets dropped away and when that falls away, they see their own resilience. What's on offer from that place is just, that's like, often the impossible becomes possible. So it's a very, it's a very hopeful and there's an evolution to our growth. It's like, as we see more into the nature of us as human beings, and as we learn more about our potential, we evolve. So it's like we don't go backwards, we go forwards. We really do. We really progress, because this energy is intelligent, right? It's informative, and it's all knowing. So it really does, and you can see that in life. You can see when people, like, all the progress that has been made in the world, all the progress with birth, and with even when you just look at technology today, it's incredible, but it's coming through people's minds, but without this energy behind it, there wouldn't be any of that. So it's just nice to know that we're connected, that we are made of that, in essence. So I've literally rambled on for 30 minutes.
Wow. So rich. Gosh, you've said so much. That could probably be a book. A transcript. Wow. So
but I think it's a good
so
place to stop. And if you've got a question, or Magdalene, if she's got a question, or anything, might not even be a question, it might just be a observation or anything that resonated or not, or you disagreed with.
I mean, what Magdalena, do you have a question? I'm not sure whether she's still there. What came to mind when you were talking about presence is look, it's just our thinking that takes us away from from the power that is there, like this incredible, like I was going to say, like when we are in the moment, and when we can be sure that we're enjoying ourselves when we're in the moment. Like that's when our experience is so fulfilling, isn't it? Like it's like there's no confusion about, well, am I in the moment or not? It's just usually when you're just light-hearted and really enjoying yourself, you can be sure that your thoughts aren't wandering somewhere else. Because when you do go off into your dream world, which most of the time we're in, we're not necessarily with what's going on in front of us. We're all over the place. Even when you were talking, I was all over the place. The recording thing kept flashing. I was thinking, is it recording? And then, like so many things. My mind was just like all over the place. Then it comes back, and every time I linked back into you, like literally, I was just like so uplifted. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I'd go off again and think, and it's just what we do. It's just kind of the natural, so in, out, in, out. It's just sort of, and I don't know, I always think of it as like, the thinking is kind of like static on the radio. It's like, because that's like when we sort of go off, and then that's when our experience isn't as rich as it could be, and then we link back in, and then like, oh, we can hear. It's like we've tuned the radio. Okay, now we can really hear, and the music is, beautiful, and we're in it, and it's we're really in the experience and enjoying it, and then we sort of go back into the crackle again, and we often don't even. I don't think we realize we're doing that. If before I came across this understanding, for sure, I didn't realize what on earth was going on. And I suppose what this understanding has given me is just like when I notice it, oh gosh, where am I? And how long have I been here? Like the amount of times I lose my phone in a day, like clearly I'm just like in my, God knows where I am, but it's like every few seconds I'm like, where's my phone? It's like I'm not present. I'm clearly not present. But which kind of reminds me of another point, which is that we don't necessarily have control over whether we're present or not. Would you say?
Yes. Well, that's just what I was going to say to you, is that like the way you were describing it, I kind of got the sense of like waves and ripples in an ocean, that kind of crashes, but it's always going back into the ocean. So the wave breaks, or, there's a small ripple or big ripple, the waves look separate, but they're always kind of being sucked back into the ocean. That ocean is the bigger presence of who we are. So it's like, it isn't a doing. There is no ways that it's a doing. The minute we think we have to do something to be present, we're not present. It isn't a doing, right? So it's more, I like how you described it, Debs. It's more like that awareness kicks in. It's like it's thoughts that kind of bringing you back, but you're not bringing yourself back. It's like you're not doing the doing. There's a deeper connection that kind of informs you. But it's and it controls like people can think that, if I just control my thinking, or if I control, then I'll be more present. But the minute you're thinking about being present, you're not present.
Yes. I love the term waking up. because it really is like waking up from a dream. That's what we're doing all day long. We're dreaming. We're dreaming. We're dreaming all over the place, into our past, into our future, all, most of the time. And then we like wake up to it. Oh gosh, where am I? I'm not here. And then just like when we wake up from a dream, it's like literally
exactly, absolutely
daytime dreaming.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of just like yesterday, my son was just sort of going on and on and on. He's like verbal diarrhea, speaks a lot. And I was just trying to do something else. And it was really annoying. It was like, oh, yeah, just let me get on with what I'm doing. And then like, I was like, just listen to him. But again, it just sort of occurs to me like, oh gosh, I'm just not with him at all. And I just tune into him for like a second. And it's like, wow, you're incredible. You are so cute. Look, how could I possibly, it's like when you come to the now and the present, it's like, it's so amazing and wonderful. And you notice, I'm just like in awe of him. And he's just like the cutest thing ever. Like, how could I ever go, anywhere else? But it's coming back to this same point that when we're not in any other thinking, what's in front of us is so magnificent. What's in front of us is always so magnificent, isn't it? It's only the thinking that sort of takes us away from that magnificence of the present moment.
But the only thing I would say as well is that sometimes it can be a real difficult experience that we're in the midst of. It could be a loss, or like that the client that I said whose baby was not well, but she had such an unbelievable sense of presence, so it's because that's the thing, that when you're, that power of presence enables you to deal with whatever's in front of you. So if it's that beautiful moment, there is an appreciation and a gratitude for whatever that is. But it's not to say that if it's a difficult thing, you will experience that in the, I mean, again, these are just words, but in such a depth of experience.
Yes.
It's such a, like I know people that have gone through grief, and it's been a deep experience of grief that has been, but it hasn't destroyed them. It's almost like they've really seen grief at another level when they've been present at it. They've been able to be there, and so it's so intelligent that it enables us to deal with everything, like the whole spectrum of life.
It's just a totally different experience, isn't it? It's a totally different experience of that same circumstance. I'm just thinking, it's not on that scale, but of something that happened when my baby was, I think they thought he had meningitis or something. He was very, very young, like real newborn. And they wanted to do this lumbar puncture, I think it's called, where they stick something into his back and take stuff out the bone, I don't know, fluid out the bone or something just horrendous. And so, and I can't bear a baby crying. I have a lot of thinking about crying babies. So they take him away from me, and I'm standing right outside the door. And I know what they're going to do, like they're strapping him down, and what my thinking is going crazy now. They're strapping him down and sticking this thing into him, and he's like screaming. And I'm like, I just can't take it, that this is so bad. I was just like, I literally can't take this. And really like, this is awful, this is awful. And then I suddenly thought, just stop. And I just stopped, and I just looked around where I was, and I looked at the doctor in front of me, and I looked at and I suddenly, it was just an amazing thing that happened. I suddenly just saw one doctor look at another doctor and smile, and like almost made me cry. It was suddenly like I dropped into this deeper place of like, I don't know what, like this, it was almost went into slow motion. It was like this interaction between, they just smiled at each other, but it was just like, it was so touching. It was somehow I just come out of my head of all this, worry, and I can't take it, I can take it, to just like, I don't know, like a real presence. And it was just such a beautiful moment that I will always remember.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved how you said you came out of your head, because it's almost like you came out of your head and went into your heart.
Yes.
That's, and I think it's very, again, this is just my experience, but it's the principles for me is a very heartfelt understanding. It's very heartfelt. Again, that's just my experience of it. The depth of presence. And your example is that, the situation wasn't an ideal situation to be in, but there was a moment where you really saw deeply, even through just a smile, you know.
Yeah.
So and I think, you know, I mean, because I don't really have that much more to say, but the one thing I do love is words. I love playing with words. It's just something I do for fun. I know it sounds absolutely stupid, but I love playing with words. And the one day I was just sitting on the bed, and the word nowhere popped up into my mind, just nowhere. And I thought, nowhere? And I thought, yeah, there's nowhere to be, right? Really, there's nowhere to be but the present moment. And then I saw the word nowhere. And if you look at it, it's NOWHERE. So there's now and there's here. And that makes nowhere. And honestly, that was a moment that I was sitting on my bed and the word nowhere just popped up. And I thought, wow, look, it's now and here. There's nowhere to be except here and now.
Yeah.
You know, and Sid always said that it's beyond the words, but for me, there's such little secret messages in these words. So that was, I just thought I wanted.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I will steal that many times. I'm just thinking about.
You can steal it with.
I'm just thinking about. You know, like the thinking that we go, whatever, backwards and forwards in our mind. But when we're in the present, we are still thinking, like you said. Oh, you've paused. Have I paused? Are you still there?
Frozen, Debs.
Oh, we're frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
you froze.
I'm back.
Yes,
I don't know how much you heard, but what I'm saying is, like, we're in our heads going backwards and forwards and all over the place. But when we're in the present of what we're talking about, we're still in thought, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Always, as long as we're alive, we're in thought. But that's when I was talking about the power of it. It's the power of thought. Right? It's the power of thought. So we're not in like the little thinking that Sid spoke about. It's more the big. We're almost, we're seeing the thought in motion, in a sense. So we're not like lost in our thinking, the content. It's not so much the content of thought. We're just, you know, powered. We're in the power of thought. So we'll still have thinking, but it's like, it's not, we don't get kind of carried away by it. We just, I loved your example. It's like in the moment you just saw a smile. Now the fact that you were aware of the doctor's smile is the power of thought going, you suddenly saw the smile, you connected to something deeper. There's a deeper connection. There's a deeper resonance almost. And then if you had the thought, I wonder why the doctor's smiling. What do you think it means? Maybe he's happy. Maybe then it's like you're gone. You're lost again. And it's not a bad thing. It happens to all of us, you know. That's just part of the human experience. But it's, you know, it's those moments. I mean, that's what insight is made of, in a sense. When you have a deep insight, it's from how I see it, it's kind of from those moments of presence, and they just pop up sometimes. It's just, you know, again, it's that wisdom just showing up.
I mean, that's why I love giving birth so much, because somehow when I give birth, my intellectual mind just disappears and I'm just left with the power of presence. It's just like, I don't do anything. I used to think it was hypnobirthing that had done that, because that's what I was, you know, did for my birth preparation. And I trained in hypnobirthing and I thought that that's what did it. But then when I came across this understanding and then actually it always puzzled me, because I was thinking, well, I wasn't doing visualizations and I wasn't like, what was happening? And I was just intensely present. Like that's all that was happening. And it was totally blissful and ecstatic, so blissful and ecstatic. And I have tied that to birth a bit. So I just keep wanting to give birth. But obviously the potential, I just want that again. I want that again. The potential is there always for that.
That's exactly, that was my question. What's there even if you're not? Presence is there even if you're not. So you don't actually have to give birth to have that feeling. That's there always. It just gets covered up. by, you know, by
Yes.
thinking other stuff, you know,
Yes.
by
I just
getting,
say that again.
but also saying by getting lost in thought in a way,
Yes.
you know.
No, when you were talking, this is a quote that I put in my book from Elsie Spittle. Only now is real, and where the answers lie, the rest is illusion.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Because there is only this moment, this now.
Yes.
That's all there is this, you know, which is being birthed by thought. You know, this moment, this experience is being birthed by the principles,
Yeah.
moment to moment to moment.
That's what's so hopeful. A fresh, new,
Exactly.
continuous flow of like, who knows what in the next moment. Like, how
Exactly.
unbelievable is that?
I know. I know. And that is so hopeful, because people start to see, wow, I've thought about this, say, particular thing my whole life in one way. And then they start to see, wow, like there's an endless amount of ways to think about whatever you think about. Endless
Mm.
amount of ways that we
Yes.
see someone. You know, we see someone in one particular way and we think that's the only way. It's not.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
but we don't have to think about how we're going to think about them, because, as going back to that quote of Elsie's, it is only this now, and you don't know how you're going to think in the next moment. If you think you know how you're going to think, then you're holding on to something old. You're holding on to an old thought, an old belief. But if you see the power and the truth of it so fresh, moment to moment, you don't know what you're going to think. There's such
Mm.
freedom in that, because that's almost like an instant declutter of the mind. It's an instant.
Mm.
All the
Right.
previous thought just goes.
Yes. All the pre-programming that we've done, just like throw it out, throw it out.
It automatically just gets, and it's like you've got this empty space from
Yeah.
which new thought. And Sid would say that. Sid said you have to pour out that old beacon of stale wine before you can put
Mm.
fresh in. So,
Yeah,
but it's,
you open yourself up basically to just so much more possibility of experience.
yes, exactly.
Whereas before, living in just a limited, we limit our experience until we realize that we can let in everything.
Exactly. Exactly.
So maybe I can be ecstatic not when I'm giving birth. I'm sure that must be possible. No, I mean, I'm sure that's why I've been drawn to the work of Three Principles and Birth, because that's where I experienced it so mind-blowingly clear
Yeah.
that this is nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with what I'm thinking. This is just nothing to do with the personal me whatsoever. And there is
Yes.
some incredible power behind this all that is intelligent,
Exactly.
provides me with everything I need in every moment, like through the birth. Like we all have all these plans, or I'm going to have hours of massage, and people go on massage courses and they buy all the oils, or they set up their water pool and all of this, and they have all these such fixed ideas of what they want. And when it comes to it, you know, they don't want to be touched. They don't want to be touched, or they don't want to go near the water, you know, because like you say, we don't know what we're going to think in each
Exactly.
moment. Yeah. It's really interesting that, because I was scared of birth for so many years, and that feeling of fear that I had for so long, that was so familiar, it was totally unrelated to the actual, you know, I did have very little fear when it came to the birth anyway, but if I did have any fear, it was a totally different, like you said before, totally different flavor, totally different feeling to that, like years and years and years of that same fear that I was just, you know, concocting each time. It was a totally different, just so interesting.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's another really good example of how, you know, that fear again is born out of thought, but it's almost like a belief, a fear of something that hasn't even happened yet.
Mm.
And because you think it feels real, but when the actual moment of birth comes, and it's like, again, you don't know until you're in that moment how you're going to experience it. And I loved how you said it's a different flavor. So it's not like, it's almost like, yeah, you may have had it, but I love how Linda Pransky often said, you can have a thought or you can have an experience without it having you. So it's like when you maybe felt a bit of fear, but you weren't overcome by the fear. The fear didn't grip you. And, and another way of saying that is like when we don't see it's thought that's creating our experience, when we think it's something other than thought, right? Like whatever, then we get lost in that feeling. We get lost in the experience of it. And often it results in something, say, hopeless or helpless, but the moment we see that this is the principles, this is thought creating it. It's only real for almost as long as I think it, right? And it's almost like, again, that's what brings you into that moment. And then so whatever experience, because we're not saying life isn't happening. I mean, you could be giving birth and, but it's almost like you so much better serve the experience when you're present. You're so much better. You know what to do. You know what to, like people when they, first hearing the principles, they think it sounds like something that you become apathetic or passive. And it's the least form of passivity or apathy possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because when you're present, it's intelligence, and it's intelligent, it's informative. It's not a passive intelligence.
You're just doing what makes sense. You're doing what makes sense, and it's just coming to you. You don't question it, just instinctive. You just do it. Yeah.
That's why I'm sure when you were giving birth, it's almost like your mind knew there's no time for Deborah's thinking.
Yes.
No time for that.
Yes.
And I would love to ask women. I'd love to do a study and ask them when they birth their babies, in that moment of birth, like what was actually happening for them. Because, okay, maybe besides like a cesarean and that where they literally don't feel anything, but natural birth, I would be surprised if their minds were thinking about what they were going to eat for supper in the actual birth when it's happening. Yeah. I know when I was laboring, my husband was irritating me like big time because he was crunching his crisps. But, but I could say complete natural birth, you're in that moment doing what you need to do.
Yes.
There's no drugs involved or anything like that. And again, that's because if you look into when women in the, were in the jungle giving birth and they didn't have epidurals and all that stuff, and they would squat or whatever they needed to do and they would give birth, right? It's like, they gain that intelligence and what, it's amazing. It's just really amazing.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, before what you were saying, like, what was I? It's interesting that when we're during the birth, we're thinking what we're thinking, right? And we're having this experience of our birth. And then sometimes after the birth, we then have a whole different load of thinking about the birth, like from where we are, like the birth that's just happened. And then maybe 6 months later, we'll have a different version of what it was like. And it's like, the fascinating thing is none of those things are true. At the time, it wasn't true. Straight after, it wasn't true. 6 months later, a year later, like, it's all just whatever we're thinking in that moment and looking back. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, none of it's true in the end. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, yes, it's true. It feels true while you're thinking it.
Right.
It feels the experience is brought to life through thought. So it feels, I mean, I suppose the question for me is maybe just asking yourself how helpful that is. It's not to say like when I think about, because I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying ultimately, that none of it's true. But actually, if I look into my life, I mean, I have a husband and 3 kids and, there's stuff is happening and I have thinking about what's going on in our lives, and that it is in a sense true, right? It is happening. But when you talk about, but yet the thoughts I have, say, about my husband and about my children, they're true while I think them, but they're not set in stone. So in that sense, you're right. It's true for as long as I think it, but my thinking changes.
Yes.
Right. I've got a lovely example, which maybe I'll just end off with which happened with my husband, is that he was waking up very early at one stage. He had to go to work like maybe for a week, very early, and he would go into the bathroom and make a real noise, and it was like noisy, and I would get woken up by this noise, and I would straight away, my thinking would be, oh, he's so selfish, he's waking me up, it's so irritating, and I would feel irritation towards him, right? Because that's where my mind went. And this happened, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and almost like the night before I would say, oh, I bet you tomorrow you're going to be as noisy or whatever. I almost like predicted how I would feel. And then I can't remember when it was, but one morning I woke up and the same thing was happening. Noise, shower going on, I could hear all the whatever, right? And this thought arose, a completely different thought was, oh my God, he is working so hard for all of you. He is, he's getting up early and he's going to work for all of you. And I felt this immense love for him, this absolute immense love and appreciation for him. And again, it was like, wow, look at that. So, it is not to say that I've only ever thought that afterwards, but all it showed me is that my experience of him is changing moment to moment, depending on what is, what thoughts going through my mind. But seeing into the deeper nature of thought, the intelligence there is, the more you see it, the direction of it is so helpful. It's kind and it's compassion. So when I had that insight around him, it did change. It did change something for me in seeing him more in a deeper way. It's not to say, as I said, I didn't have different thinking, but it's the same with my children. It's the same with my kids, and so you're right in the sense that it's nothing real, but there's something about seeing the nature of thought, the power of that is, I don't know, that it's, yeah.
I suppose it's kind of this thing. It's kind of saying that we can't really get close to reality, like that there is no reality. There's no objective reality. It's just, there's no objective reality. It's just,
well, it's your thinking. Exactly. It's your reality is what you're making of it via thought in that moment.
I mean, I just think of people who have like births, on paper, the births look absolutely fine. And yet the woman is totally traumatized. She's got post-traumatic stress disorder after birth.
Exactly. And that's what I was kind of saying, depending on how they viewed it and they're thinking about it.
Yes.
And some might see themselves as a failure or whatever. That's real for them.
Yes.
As long as they're thinking of it, it's real.
Right.
Because that's, but it's but seeing the power of thought, you see, oh my word. What's real for, when you talk about real, is the process, is the intelligence.
Right.
But so the formlessness, right? The power behind it. But if we look deep into that is what Sid would say, the allness and the isness. I mean, that's going very deep. The nothingness, everythingness. So, but sometimes that goes like just, okay, let's just stop there.
The nowhereness, now here-ness. Oh, sorry, Magdalena, you've just put a chat. You were saying something and I didn't see. Love hearing all about the 3 principles and the intelligence. When we start thinking about birth and replaying it is just thought. Oh, I think that was from before. When we start thinking about birth and replaying it, it's just thought. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I've been hello. I'm just so amazed with your talk, ladies. I love it. I just worked it out how I can actually speak to the microphone.
Oh.
So it took me for an hour. Actually finishing it. It's just amazing because it's like the big mind and small mind. That's kind of concept, isn't it? When and obviously some people would call it consciousness, what it's now, and subconsciousness. It's a kind of more powerful part of us, but you call it intelligence. Would you say that, or is it totally different thing? Because my background background is just also hypnobirthing, a little bit of hypnosis, and I'm just thinking this is just awesome, because most of those things, you know, like women who are coming to see me and they're saying, oh, I'm really, really depressed. And I said, okay, so are you happy? You know, can you just remind yourself about any happy, positive moments in your life? And they say, no, I can't. But when I go to ask how they were, you know, children when they were little ones, or when they were building sandcastles, and they say, oh yeah, that was a great time. So they actually can bring the positive. So it's the intelligence, they can actually, you know, kind of go to this mental thing that they stop being negative. So when they find a peacefulness, a kind of joyful moment, then the good feelings, then it's easier to hear that quiet wisdom, and, you know, kind of the intelligence, then they're breaking it, you know, breaking it out of the feeling low.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's not totally dissimilar to what you're saying. You know, the intelligence is, you could say, consciousness. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Consciousness for sure. And but I suppose when a person's saying they're depressed, it's almost like if you almost had like a little microscope and you could go into their mind. You know, found so many thoughts where they're convinced that they're depressed. What we're pointing to is that they're not a depressed person. They're just they're a whole person having depressive thinking. And so when you like remind them of, and that's kind of what I did with that client of mine when we were looking at times when she felt resilience. So when you remind, you know, her of like, well, can you think of a time when you were happy? You know, that's I mean, bringing up a memory of a happy moment, again, you have to do that through thought, right?
Yes, the thought, So that's the first principle, is the thought, the mind.
Exactly. But ultimately, people at their essence, when in relation to this talk, that power that we were speaking of is the intelligence, which is consciousness, which is not, you know, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. So as long as when we're in our person, there's no ego there. There's no. It's pure intelligence.
It's
Debs,
amazing.
what you want.
It's like a pure wisdom. It's like kind of divine thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it comes through us. That's why we often say, you know, our experience is coming through us. It's not, and we become less a victim to our experience, and we become more in life as opposed to being a victim of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it kind of being really, really present in that moment.
Yeah.
And do you think that, you know, kind of sometimes when you obviously think about animals, I'm not obviously intelligence is something that probably doesn't affect animals, but if you think about it, kind of the instinct, you know, how they, for example, if the animal is being chased by other animal, and if they're not get caught, they just shake it out, that those emotions and that thought, and they carry on. So they lived in that moment, but they just move on, kind of don't hang out in the kind of
you know, Magdalena, I love that you brought up animals. Okay, and I don't know, I mean, I have no idea what animals think. But there are so many stories where I think like that, oh my word, they are really in the present, and they're so connected to that energy. Because if you think about when there was that terrible tsunami a couple of years ago, I think it was maybe 10 years ago already. He said that before the waves came, the animals went right up the hill, the animals left. And it's like there's, you know, so, and there's lots of stories with animals, lots. But I don't know, because I've never, you know, but to me, it looks like that they're absolutely connected to that consciousness and that innate. And I think, you know, with the principles, it's, I like that you brought up animals.
I didn't want to, because I worry that you might be offended, and because it's
not at all.
Such a big new thing for me, and actually the principles, you know, the 3 principles are very new things to me. So I'm going to read up about this, and I think, you know, Sid that you mentioned, he's probably wrote a lot of stuff, and I'm like looking forward to the podcasts, you know, and stuff like that. So it's amazing. So it's a Sid Banks, is that correct?
Yes, I would. He's written quite a few books, but if you want, the Enlightened Gardener is a very nice one. That's more like a storybook one.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you just Google Sydney Banks or the three principles, you'll see a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for that. And it's just, as a mother myself and birth worker, I feel so enlightened by it, and by Debbie when saying that she's, did hypnobirthing and so on, but then how she gave birth herself and, without visualization, how she allowed that, to be in a moment. That
was
amazing.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's just so beautiful.
Magdalena, are you in the UK? Just curiously.
Yes, I am in UK. I'm in Bath.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'm really glad you did. I'm
so sorry that I just discovered how to just work the Zoom out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, wow.
Thank you for organizing this. I'm actually, if you don't mind me, I'm going to point lots of people to you to look for your work, because it's just outstanding and I'm just so impressed. Love it.
I don't know if you're part of the Facebook group 3 Principles in Pregnancy and Birth. So that's where
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Oh, okay. So that's where we hold all these that's where we're holding all these talks. So I'll
can I join? Is it so I'm just so three principles.
Three principles in pregnancy and birth, and you'll find the past talks that we've done on this. So you'll find that interesting.
Is it 3 principles like a number, or is it just actually?
Yeah. No. Spell out 3.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting coming from hypnobirthing to this. It's like things like changing thinking and positive thinking. It kind of all pales into insignificance when you're looking at like the divine wisdom that's available to us. It's like it's just a different level altogether. So it will really enhance your work. It's really enhanced my work with pregnant ladies. So yeah, I hope you enjoy your journey with us. Okay, Stacey, thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yes, if you just let me know if you've got time for a coffee next week. Otherwise, we'll be in touch, Deb.
Yes, thank you. Fabulous. Or let me just stop recording here. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Magdalena.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debs.
Oh.